Hello guys, I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this is quite a strange message. The message reads like this. Hello my brother, how are you? There is a story that I want to share with you. This thing happened a long time ago. This is what my own father told me just before he died. Before he died, my father asked me to bring a pastor to that hospital where he was admitted. So I just thought that my father wanted that pastor to pray for him. But on that day, when I went with that pastor to that hospital ward where my father was being admitted, he asked the pastor if God would forgive him for all the sins that he had committed when he was still physically fit. Then that pastor said, God is able to forgive any kind of a sin, no matter what the sin might be. But he never confessed this thing to the pastor. He only asked the pastor if God was willing to forgive him. After the pastor he had prayed for him, he then asked the pastor to leave that hospital ward where he was admitted, and he asked my mom and my siblings to get out of that hospital ward because he wanted to speak with me since I am his firstborn. He then told me that he was given a charm by a man from Malawi. He said that this thing is called Sandawana. He said that he was given this Sandawana whilst he was staying in a refugee camp in Zimbabwe. This was way back when Zimbabwe was still okay. He told me that when it was time for people to migrate back to Angola, that is when he carried the charm that he was given by that man who claimed to be a traditional healer. But that thing, according to my father, has caused a lot of destruction in the family. This is the full story in details. Because of all the civil wars that were happening in our country, that is when my father and my mother carried us and they fled with us to Zambia. And from Zambia, that is when they migrated to Zimbabwe. And at that time, we were staying at a refugee camp, even though we were still young, but I still remember a little bit. So this was in the early 2002. According to my father, the place where this refugee camp was, it was near a small shopping center, and my father, he used to go out of the refugee camp so that he can go and drink beer with the locals. That is when he met this man. This man told him that if he was willing and if he was a hard-working man, he can help him to get a lot of piece jobs. This man, my father, told me that he was working as a gardener close to that place where we were staying in that refugee camp. So my father became friends with that man. Whenever that man would find a piece job, he would call my father. Back in those days, there was no phones or what. He would come to the refugee camp, then he would speak with my father about the details of that piece job. After working, my father would then give that man a little bit of money, since he was the one who would go around looking for piece jobs for my father. My father was earning a small amount of money. At least we had some money, and my father became famous in that area. He was interacting with a lot of people. That is when my father told me that his friend then suggested to him that you could actually make him rich, and instead of my father being a man who was just doing all of these piece jobs, instead he could actually open up his own big shops. But in this country, according to that man, you needed to be strong, because he said that once you get rich, there were people who were going to take you down. But if you are spiritually strong, people will be afraid of you. According to my father, he said that when they did all of those rituals, he saw a creature that came out of a river, because he went with that man to this other river. That is when that man did all of the rituals so that he can get that Sandawana. And my father said that a creature, a strange creature, came out of a river. Then the man took that creature and he gave that creature to my father. When I asked my father, where is this creature? My father told me that he doesn't know where that thing went, because he was supposed to keep it in a safe place in a place where my mother was not supposed to touch the ritual item. My father told me that this creature transformed and it became sort of like a dead tree branch, but it was a small dead tree branch that could fit in your pocket. That herbalist, who was now my father's friend, then gave my father that ritualistic item, and he gave my father some instructions on what he was supposed to do and things that he was not supposed to do. So my father told me that he then returned back to that refugee camp and he looked for a place to hide that ritualistic item. My father told me that he once went out into the fields because he was looking for a place where he could hide that thing. But after a couple of days, when he went back to that place, he saw that there were a lot of kids that were playing in that area. He saw that there was a lot of kids that were playing in that area. So he was afraid that the kids were going to find this ritualistic item. My father told me that he took that ritualistic item and he hid it first in the tent that we were staying, because now he was earning a lot of money. He managed to open a shop in Harare. It was a fabrics shop, and that shop, it was growing so big. My father then asked his friend to look for another accommodation, and then when his friend had looked for an accommodation, that is when my father moved us out of the refugee camp, but we were still staying close to that refugee camp. But now my father, he was now working full time at his fabrics shop. Here and there, my mother and I, we used to go with our father to that fabrics shop so that we can help him. Business was booming. According to our father, indeed, business was booming. When my father confessed to me, he told me that he kept on having this strange dream, and in his dream, he kept on seeing this snake. The snake that he was seeing, it was black in color. After a couple of days, he went back to that man who had given him this Sandawana charm. That man told him that he had to look for a sacrifice, and that man advised my father to sacrifice his own last born, my youngest brother. And when my father heard that he had to do this sacrifice, he then asked the man if there was another option. That man then said, indeed, there are so many options. You can choose to sacrifice one of your relatives' children. At that refugee camp, there was one of my father's elder brother. He had two children, my cousin sisters. They all died in Zim, oh brother. Whenever I think about the way that my cousin sisters died back in Zim, my heart just bleed, because they were still so young and they all died of a snake bite. One day they were playing as usual, so they went out into the fields. When they were playing out in the fields, they were all bitten by a poisonous snake, but that snake was never seen. They all died on the same day. My father's elder brother buried two of his kids on the same day. He was really heartbroken. As young as I was, everyone in our family was heartbroken because of the way our cousin sisters died. After the civil war was over in Angola, we then migrated back to our country. But when we migrated back here in our country, my father continued with his business. Yes, he was a successful businessman. When we arrived here in Angola, in no time, my father managed to purchase some properties. Some of the properties that he managed to purchase, my father then rented out those properties to other people. That is how my father has been making money. When my father confessed all of these things, that is when my father just screamed and he passed away. This thing, I don't even know where it is, because my father never told me if this Sandawana that was given to him, if he left it there in Zimbabwe or if he came with it to Angola. But the only thing that I have noticed about our family is that a lot of people, they just die. And when it is time for people to die in our family, indeed they will die. In 1 year, we can bury up to 3 people. Sometimes we can go for 2 years without anyone dying in our family. But the moment that death will choose to visit our family, then people will die, Brother Nashi. There was this other time, I think it is 3 years ago, we buried 6 people in our family in 1 year. My brother, I just wish that my father had told me that this thing that was given to him by this man from Malawi when we were still refugees back in Zimbabwe, there is no peace in our family. I am the only one who knows this secret. I don't even know what to do about this confession that my own father gave to me. At that time, I wish I had told the pastor whom I had gone with to the hospital to pray for my father before he had passed away. That pastor, he has since passed away. Maybe he was going to help me. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that was forwarded to me by one of our admins. If you have any family history, anything that happened in your family that you want to share with the rest of the world, do not hesitate to contact us via our email address. I'll be back with another episode.